Welcome to Liverpool Community Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Johnston Lynch. I'm here as usual, but this time I'm here with something different. I have two guests with me today who come from the community that I'm actually living in late Liverpool and everything. And they work for a service called Seacole House, which deals with people who are dealing with issues around mental health. I could say black people who are dealing with mental health, but I just want to be clear that they work with all types of people and stuff and everything, which they also want to be clear as well. So I'm joined here today by Miata McBoima.
Yes, McBoima.
McBoima?
Yes.
I got it close, all right?
Very close.
Thank you. And sitting next to her is Simon Torkerton, who I know from back in the day and everything. Simon, you looking young as usual.
Yeah, I had to shave.
Yeah, okay. I wish I could stay the same.
Put a bit of cream on.
I know. I wish I could stay the same. I'm not into that whole just for men thing. You know, I mean, Phil should be because he's all gray. But, I mean, that's all right. He's proud of his age. But, but speaking of age, I mean, Simon, like I said, I've known you for some time, but I'm pretty sure the people who have come across Mercy Go House and stuff like that, you've been there for 17 years.
Yeah, nearly 18, yeah.
Wow. 18 years in the same place, bruv.
Yeah.
You must really like it.
No one else will have me.
Well, you know what? I could say that. I mean, I had to deal with them for an hour just in trying to get notes.
That's a problem.
But no, I mean, you're pretty much the advocacy training manager at Mary Seacole House, which is a whole journey in itself that we'll talk about. But, you are also joined by Miata, who is the Community Outreach Engagement Officer.
Yes, I am.
Now, for those of you who don't know about Mary Seacole House, you probably heard about Mary Seacole, especially in this time, because there's a lot more celebrations going on, especially this year, around Mary Seacole and the impact that she has had on this community or us as people and everything. Have you guys been following any of that? Like the events that's been going on?
Yeah.
Like at St. George's Hall.
Yeah,
and
I made it to St. George's Hall.
Yeah. You were there?
Yeah. And so then they're talking about the statue and
The
black woman to have a statue in St. George's Hall. And
what do you think about that?
I think it's great. I think that it's ironic, really, for us, because where we're based on Upper Parliament Street, or we are actually moving not far, and we're still opposite. But I'll say this, the irony is that we're Mary Seacole House on one side of Upper Parliament Street, and Florence Nightingale House is the other side.
Now that is serious irony, because where you guys are located is at the top of Princess Avenue, which is also known as the Mason-Dixon line. That's me as an American, I can say it. That separates Toxic from the Dingle, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you telling me that across from you is Florence Nightingale House?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
The other, I suppose, if you look back at the Mary Seacole story and how things were done and the way that she was treated and refused by the British government to go, and then Florence Nightingale was sort of like keeping her away from the royal family, didn't want her to meet them.
Yeah.
Florence Nightingale House is a place where they look after people with addiction.
Wow.
Which I'm sure would have been one of the things that would have been a little less palatable to Florence, but would have been something that Mary Seacole would have been happy to have helped with.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, that's interesting. You learn something new every day about your own neighborhood. Now, let's talk about where you moved to, because you moved to the bank. It was like the old bank over there, right? Yeah. Now, I was telling Phil, it looks like a drive-through to me. But it also was a funeral parlor at one point?
Yeah, just the bank closed. It was a drive-through. I think it was the only one.
Yeah.
You'd actually get your money in the car as you go through. But when they left, when they closed all the branches, then it was left empty, and then it was a funeral parlor.
Yeah.
For a while.
But I said, this must be like the TARDIS because it looks really small and it's big on the inside. And you told me that there's 2 levels below.
There's a basement,
Yeah.
And then there's a first floor where all our offices are. and then there's the ground floors for the activities.
Well,
The
yeah,
basements,
there's
in
also
case
the
we need
vault
to.
as well,
Yeah.
yeah.
If anyone's disagreeing with what we're saying,
Yeah,
then-
there's a nice vault.
yeah,
Listen, man, they're there. How can you disagree?
not all day. We're going to furnish it with, like, the Steve McQueen
Yeah, yeah,
wall, so you can sit.
The Cooler King.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, you was telling me, like, kind of like the origins of the house and everything. How it started sometime after the Tassif riots.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately, that's all people talk about when they talk about Liverpool 8 is the Tassif riots. But in this case, what did they do?
Well, Mary Seacole House came about on the back of that because there was no support for the black community and there was nowhere they can go where they can express their opinions, have their voices heard. And so the ladies came together and pioneered Mary Seacole House. And it's been going on, successfully, I must say, until now.
And I mean, but one of their main remits was around mental health because
Yeah.
I mean, and we should obviously notate. I mean, mental health. I mean, the words have gone strange over the years and stuff like that. But this is not like someone who is insane or anything. It's just like someone who has issues and where they have to need some support. And that support could come in many different ways. You were telling us that there would be like language barriers and religious barriers, or but then there's also could be just the support of being black in this neighborhood sometimes, which is why the black mental health is kind of like a strong, part of it, isn't it, there, Simon?
Yeah. I'd say the start of the organisation, I mean, that's right, and there was a group of women, the Black Sisters, and they worked with a couple of other people. And when anybody comes to the organisation fresh, I always have to explain to them that the two things, the basics, the things that you think about this organisation is that you're dealing with people from a black background and with mental health needs. And we always look at and I have always looked at early intervention and some of the issues that are being caused as well as anything by having to engage with the mainstream services who would disadvantage people from black backgrounds. They would discriminate. And there was a level of racism within services. So some of the stuff that even now that we've just actually done, we've just done a research study with Merseycare.
Right.
And they wanted to come and talk to us and other organisations and other groups. But one of the things that was highlighted, which was already known anyway, but was highlighted again, was the fact that compared to a white counterpart, a black person would spend longer in hospital, they'd have less leave, they'd have a higher level of medication and a more serious diagnosis than their white counterpart. So they were the things that still haven't changed. And I think I've asked the question just in work, I've seen all these changes that have happened over the years. Lots of things have changed in the way that things are done, and we mentioned before about that 21 page leaflet with bullet points.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that stuff just is the same things. So we're looking at really the same baseline, just that people try and change things which don't effectively change. And there's things like there's more covert racism, discrimination, oppressive behaviours and practices now, which was more overt before because people could get away with it. And there's legislation that deals with it now. So people are more worried about their jobs, about criminal offences and stuff like that. So they're not going to openly do it. So they were the things that were being dealt with then, which we're still dealing with now.
And
So
that's
the
where
different
your
context.
job comes in, isn't it? Like, as far as the advocacy officer, is that like, I was asking you, like, as the training manager, how many people have gone through your service? And you was like saying, well, after 17 years, you couldn't even really calculate the number of how many people have gone through your training program. But I was like, well, then how many advocates are there?
Yeah, that's there are lots of lay advocates. One of the things that we try and encourage is self-advocacy Obviously, it's self-advocacy. The program itself is called Peer Advocacy Training Program. So we're looking at people coming on the training, and the idea is that when they've done the training, they then go and share the legislation, the way of tackling the discrimination, the codes of practice of the different legislation. So we're looking at the Mental Health Act, Mental Capacity Act, Care Act, Equality Act, all of those things that people need to navigate the services and the system, and then they can share them. While at the same time, we want to be there to support that.
Yeah.
One of the things, like I say, we want people to be able to self-advocate. That's with an advocate in the room or on their own.
Yeah.
But it's knowing what their rights are. So,
But I mean, there's also that problem of like, how do we diversify this? Like, so you were talking about, like there are these times that the contracts come around. And, like there was like basically like 3 types of contracts and everything. Can you explain that a little bit?
okay, so there's obviously the different services that people are looking at. As I said, there's one very distinct, which is the independent mental health advocacy contract, which we've got through an organisation called Power, who have the contract with the provider, but then subcontract to us because they need to have a black advocate available for people in secure hospitals, so that they are getting a service that is, I wouldn't say, is not discriminating against them, but they may feel more comfortable speaking to a black advocate than a white advocate. And I think all of the advocates that they have are middle-aged white women. If middle-aged might be an offensive term for some people, that they look at their age. I don't know where middle-age starts and stops, but anyway, that might not be appropriate for some of the clients that are in those secure hospitals. So we have that contract with them. We've got another contract which is basically a citywide advocacy service, which was predominantly for people from black and ethnic minorities, but it didn't preclude anybody from coming and using it. So we basically had a 50-50 split on that one historically, but obviously we've grown that contract slightly. And then we have one that is solely for people from BAME backgrounds. And the difference, I suppose, between those two as well is, one, everything's about well-being now because of the Care Act.
Yeah.
But one's more about people who've gone further in to services, and obviously there are white British people coming to that one. The other one's more about prevention and earlier intervention to stop people from going into the services, so that we actually catch people from BAME backgrounds. And there's different issues that people from that contract will have than people who've been here for an amount of time. So there might be more like language barriers or understanding of the system. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think some of the professionals understand the system and how it works. So that's something we could help them with as well.
Yeah.
But, there's that particularly for new arrivals, immigration, and then also actually working out why the system's doing what it's doing. And it's bringing that together. And I do have a view that there's a 50% sort of working on that contract where the services have got a responsibility to move their service to fit with those people. And we've got a responsibility to educate those people about what services are there available and what you can get.
Yeah, and really that was what my point was. It wasn't like a slight against the training. It was the fact that there are people out there that are trained to do this advocacy, but really they kind of like have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And really what I'm trying to point out too is that there are so many services out there that people are needed, whether it's the culture or the language or whatever it is. I'm just trying to say is that maybe that's one way of looking into Mary Seacole House and looking into the advocacy training is like, oh, well, our organization really could use someone that does this kind of thing. So that's what I really was also just trying to point out there.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think the difficulty that we have is if a statutory body is funding a service, then there's I don't know whether it's an unwritten rule or written rule, but then you're not likely to get funding outside of the statutory funding.
Yeah.
So love to go and get more funding to deliver the advocacy, but what funders will do is sit there and say, it's already being paid for in that city, so we're not going to get funding for that. So, and if we could, we'd have a much bigger workforce, and it would be brought from those people, because it's people with the experience of using services that we encourage to come on the training, and they've got the best way of understanding the system, and the way it works. So that would be ideal for us.
I mean, that's what I mean, man. It's like, I don't know anybody who hasn't been on a diversity training course, and that kind of thing, because it is within the remit of every business to probably have some type of person that represents as a diversity officer. And, so that person that can understand more about what they're being hired to do is probably what's best. You probably encountered this more yourself there, Marietta, because of the fact that you actually go out into the community and engage, and I was asking you, how many times have you been asked to deliver the diversity course?
The diversity course, I think Simon does that and he drags me along. So
You know what? I was trying to help you out there. Not to let anybody know what's really going on.
He drags me along, and I think it's really good because I tend to go to the universities and talk to social work students because my background is social work, and it's good to input from an early start, because then you go in with the idea and knowing and understanding that people are different, their needs are different, and so before getting conditioned to go that it's one rule fits all. And I think that's what's good with our motto at Seacole House. It's same right, different needs, because all our needs are different. And so diversity, it's not an attack or it's not an accusation. It's to say that, yes, I might need mental health support, but my needs are different. My understanding of the policies are different. I'll give an example. It was bonfire night, recently.
Oh my God, dogs go crazy.
Yeah, and there are people who get triggered, because they've come from a war zone, where their bombs fall in and, their gunshots and everything. But so if a family member, as a family says, oh, we're not going trick-or-treating or we're not going to bonfire night, it's not that they're not assimilating into the culture. It's because where they've come from, there's a bit of trauma. So understanding that, okay, right, I get it. It's not that it's neglect, or it's not that you're not participating, but there are ways of, doing, And so I think that's one of the things that we do at Seacole House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, also too, is I just think that, this is like, I wouldn't even call it a taboo subject, but it's a subject that is always on people's minds. But, diversity is also, it's not just a black and white thing. It's, there's all kind of differences. But it's like about approaching them and how do you get people to understand, because there's always like that whole, I think you used the word culturally appropriate advocacy. It's always like that bit of understanding where, I like the story. Maybe you could say it again about a person trying to transfer privilege.
Oh, yeah. So, the culturally appropriate advocacy, I always contextualise. It came from the review of the Mental Health Act.
Yeah.
And without going too much into it, I've actually said to them, don't do this. Yeah. Because you're not going to get it right. You haven't got it right up to now, so all of a sudden you think you're going to get it right, you're not. So I've said to Departments of Health, government, people leading it, don't just throw it into legislation and try and fix everything for us. But they actually decided they were going to do an add-on of this training for people. And one of the women that was on the training, she's from a white British background, from the Northeast. I'd add a little bit to this as well, because this was strange for me. But was explaining about white privilege and the power that came with it. And she said she wanted to give some of the power back. I don't know how she was going to do it, put it in a little box.
I have a wand and I want to give the power back to you.
You can have it. I was sort of explaining now, that sort of perpetuates the problem. Yeah. Because it means you're in a position of power to give it back. And I said that it doesn't work like that. But then there was a discussion around how it should work, and I demonstrated how the power can shift in a room just by having the knowledge that they didn't have about a certain case study that was put forward. And then they said, oh, but Simon, yeah, you have got the power because you're so knowledgeable. And this is the thing which I want to come back to with what you said about this idea of cultural appropriate, and we don't really see it in that way. What we see is a human being sitting in front of you, and you find out what their needs are. Pure and simple.
It'd be nice if that was the way.
But that is our way. And that's why I think, I was saying about this local authority contract that we've got expanded. That's the approach that we have. And that's what we do. If everyone just had a go at that and stop trying to overcomplicate it and stop trying to find, we just put you here and stereotype you and pigeonhole you and we'll do this for you. Even the positive things that they do for people, they're getting it wrong because they're assuming you're from there, so we'll do this. And one of the things, that's the additional thing I wanted to bring in with that training, and I've heard people mention it in the past, but one of the women there said that she didn't feel comfortable speaking to people from an ethnic minority background because she was scared she'd offend them with what she said.
Yeah. Or how she said it.
Yeah. And I was just like, well, is a little tip for you. Don't
say it.
Don't offend people. You don't have to say the things you're going to say. Find out what the person needs.
Yeah.
And then work on that basis. They're individual. That's purely and simply everything. Some of the stuff that I'd say I'm saying that it'd be alien to people because they'll think there's something more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And yet there is. You go into it and you need to know.
Well, that's time, culture, background.
And you find out from the individual because everybody's different.
Yeah. I mean, pretty soon we'll move forward in time. We're in the new millennium. We'll move forward in time where people will be far removed from the 50s and the 60s mentality. But then again, will we survive to that time where it will be just that simple for everyone? Now, I mean, Miata, you brought up something which I thought was just like interesting, where you were at a meeting and see, how can we say it without naming the organization? Where where people try to make things palatable.
Yeah.
For a white audience.
Yes.
As far as your reaction to it.
Yes, I think there tends to be an error or an air of watering down or making Black history palatable, and the reality is, until we accept it and identify it and own it, it's not going to change. And I think that's why the problems that were around the start of, creating Mary Seacole House is still there, because we refuse to sit and accept that there are things that are different. And in so doing, it's not an accusation, it's an acknowledgement of, yes, I hear you, I see you, how can we make it better?
Yeah.
It's not that I see you, it didn't happen, let's just pretend it didn't happen and just move on. It's I see you, I hear it, and how can we work together to move forward? Yeah. And so, yes, and I think when it comes to talking about Black people, and I think there's a great cloud around it, because you'll go into organizations where they say we're equality and diversity, and you'll see every other race but Black people. And I think that's where the problem is, because then they say, oh no, but we're inclusive. You go, but where is the Black person? Yes, we've got an Indian prime minister. Yes, we've got a Scottish prime minister who is a person of color, but they're not Black.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the difference is, the nuance is, because it's a person of color, so it means we're progressing.
Yeah.
But there's a demographic that's been left behind, and that people are uncomfortable to have that conversation, and that's Black people.
Well, I think that moves us into like kind of like the present and the future of what Mary Seacole House is doing, because you were talk because as I was talking about, we come from a generation, you know, the '60s, '70s, feel from the '50s. But you were starting a new project, I believe. You said one of your people, Chloe, is starting a project with young people, and I think that's where it is, where they say young people are the future.
They are the
So can you
future.
tell us about this project?
I think my artist should tell you, because it might look like some level of favoritism if I do it.
Well, you know what, Simon, I wasn't really looking at you.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
It's just in your direction. All right, go ahead, Mia.
Chloe, she's just created the youth board, and as you said, the future is with the youth, because they understand, they know, and they're accepting of mental health and mental ill health, and so she's created a space where they can come and have their voices heard, where they can contribute into the development of Mary Seacole House, and to make positive changes, to see where they can give their views and their thoughts on the Mental Health Act, and hopefully they can impact and change that in the future, because obviously the future is changing with technology and all of that. There are things that we're not used to, but the new generation will be, very good with that. So
yeah, they could create a TikTok dance.
Yeah.
The
TikToks, yes, and with AI and all of that. So
don't bring it up.
So Chloe, she's created a safe space where they can come and have their voices heard, and hopefully have positive change.
I mean, I actually would love to hear from them, in a sense where it's like, our youth of today, the new millennium youth, I don't know what they call it, Gen Y, Gen X, whatever. But, it's like, who don't have the pain and suffering of our past. Mm-hmm. What we had to go through. I mean, like you were mentioning the person with the 21 bullet points. I've been to so many meetings where, it's just a shouting match of pain and suffering, and nobody gets anything done because they're too busy trying to just vomit their pain on everyone else. Whereas young people who haven't experienced that, they may have heard it, but they haven't experienced it. And I would love to see what they do with the future, and then maybe this thing that you guys are doing with your youth board is one of those good positive things that is out there, and I want to thank you for coming and joining us here in the studio. I mean, I've often known about Mary Seacole House from the past, but I'm hoping that people get to learn a little bit more about Mary Seacole House and what you guys are doing. Yeah, the advocacy training, I get on to that. I mean, do you guys do like when does that training come around, or?
It's it got really sort of stifled by the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately one of the guys that used to do the training for us, Martin Walsh, he passed away last year. So we were doing quite a bit of, we were doing other training. So we were doing stuff around autism, Mental Health Act. We've got a package of different training days that we were putting on. So it's sort of out of respect more than anything that I haven't pushed it, but we need to get it back on, up and running out there.
You need to get onto that social media there, Simon. So speaking of that, how can people find you? Or not you personally, but
I'll give you my home address. I don't it's either there or the office.
I'll give you my phone number.
Well, actually, no. You can have my phone number. My phone number is 07808 777
He did it. Anyway, how can people find the organization?
So our website is www.maryseacolehouse.com. Our email is info@maryseacolehouse.com.
And I'm pretty sure on your website, when Simon finally gets around to updating it or getting some young person to do it, those training days will be on it.
We'll get it sorted.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's just like, I think what you do is just really important work, and I just think that that's what hopefully today is about, is just getting the word out about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's not. I think we've talked about the a lot about the work in advocacy.
Yeah.
But we have got that
the well-being.
multicultural mental health and well-being side to it as well,
Yeah,
which is an ongoing support service. And we do all sorts of other different things with activities and
And anybody feeling in need of that, they also contact the website and the social media to find out.
Yeah, and people can just drop in. Yeah, they could just walk in. It's an open door. Everyone's welcome. Fridays are our busiest days. A lot of activities going on.
Nearly donuts.
Donuts and more.
It's more
trying to make the donuts, Simon.
It's more social. Isn't
it? Fridays is very social.
You told me not to say that. But either way, again, I would like to thank Simon Torkerton and Miata May Borum.
Boima. Yes.
Hey, listen, man. It's over here. I already got one on. Miata. And everything. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me here in the studio and everything. Again, thank you guys for listening. Please like and subscribe. But do seriously check out Mary Seacole House and what they're doing. If you didn't know, now you know.